I'm Dmitry Sitkovetsky, violinist and conductor. You're listening to Keeping the Flame, a series about the way one's life is shaped by family, political system, and great art, but not defined by any of them. Of course, Bach is the composer for musicians, but in some ways maybe particular for the violinists. It's sort of alpha and omega of the repertoire because his 6 sonatas and partitas really represent the ultimate creation for violin solo. Because there are many wonderful pieces were written for violin and orchestra, for violin and piano, for various groups, jumping, but violin solo, it's Bach. I worked out many years ago that if every day I would play at least one movement out of 6, then the day is not a waste. And I worked out how I'm going to do it. Well, that's actually quite logical because they're written first G minor, then A minor, then B minor, then D minor, famous one with Chaconne, then C major and E major. So 6 days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And whenever I start playing, what's today? Oh, today is Wednesday. So it has to be A minor, a movement from A minor sonata, and so forth. And what's on Sunday? On Sunday, you can play any of them or all of them or whatever longer movement. It just sort of organizes my violinistic life. I think it's rather significant that my first performance with orchestra was when I was 15 years old, was Bach, concerto in A minor. Later on, I got completely shocked and involved and obsessed with his perhaps greatest piece he ever wrote, the Goldberg Variations. In 1741, he was commissioned by a Russian consul in Dresden, Count Kaiserling, who was supposedly an insomniac. So he wanted to have a piece for his house harpsichordist, whose last name was supposedly Goldberg. That's the name, the Goldberg Variation. He wanted him to play throughout the night. So in other words, the piece that will start, go through quite a long way, then come back to the beginning and start again and start again. So this insomniac heard this piece from the beginning to the end, supposedly many, many times and many sleepless nights. The Goldberg Variations is an extraordinary piece of music, which of course was played and was written for 2 manual harpsichord. That means there were 2 keyboards, which is an important moment because when you play on 2 different manuals with your 2 hands, left and right, they never clash like they would on the piano, on the modern piano. Perhaps the greatest interpreter of all times, Glenn Gould, he played, of course, on the modern piano. And that is much more difficult, and Bach never intended to be on 1 manual. So it's already a variation on the theme. It's not really the original instrument. And I discovered him after he died. I saw this extraordinary video film of him playing and also talking about Goldberg Variations. He was a very unusual human being. He also loved to sing while he played. So there's always, this Gould playing and you hear him. And he never wanted to correct that because he was always more inspired when he sang. He also, if you see these videos, he also conducted. If he played with one hand, the other one was conducting. And he was completely, like being possessed by a spirit. And that was so infectious and it was so powerful that you couldn't really get away from it. After that, I just became totally obsessed with Glenn Gould and with Bach. So when I heard Glenn Gould's playing and heard it again and again, I was absolutely amazed at how this extraordinary polyphonic mind worked. Polyphony. Polyphony, that means there's several voices going on at the same time. And usually what the fugue is one voice, and then the other voice repeats what that voice did while the other one continues to play in the counterpoint, and then the third one. And unlike any other pianist before or since, he made on this single keyboard on the piano, each voice having its own personality. And that's what gave me an idea that maybe I should give each voice an instrument, because it's much easier to hear the voices when you have violin, viola, and cello than all keyboard. And without any thought of this ever becoming a public performance or a public success or anything at all, just for my own amusement, and because I was so excited about it, I started writing it out. Every night, I couldn't wait till everything came down and I had quiet night time. I was in the company with Bach and Gould. And that exalted company just kept me completely euphoric. There is a certain mysterious, if you like, a spiritual and mysterious connection that I felt, and certain decisions, because when you reinvent the piece, some things which are very good for strings and not good for keyboard, and vice versa. So I had to change things. I had to see. And certain decisions, I don't even remember how I came to it. And I believe sometimes my hand was being led by Bach, I suppose, I hope. When I see him, I hope I see him. At least if he's not happy about certain things, I'll be the first one to admit it and be very grateful if he shows me where. And Glenn Gould, of course. So I sort of communicated with him. Bach was a Pythagorean, so the numbers meant a great deal. Imagine a Christmas tree. So you have a foundation, aria, then you have 15 variations. Then all of a sudden French overture. So that's a new beginning. You have 10 variations, which is the next one, 15, 10. And then you have the last 5. After the most extraordinary third minor variation, the G minor, number 25, comes the 5, and then the theme again. You have a perfect Christmas tree, but really it is a perfect pyramid. 15, 10, and 5. Then, to go further and to challenge himself, every third variation is a canon. Canon is basically a simplified fugue, which means one voice begins, it could be a motive of just 3 notes, and the other voice imitates exactly the same motive. And that's called imitation or a canon, except he used it sometimes in reverse. Now, every third variation, variation 3, variation 6, variation 9, 12, 15, and so forth. Every third variation, the motive in first voice gets further and further away from each other. So the first canon that he introduces in his third variation is called in unisono, which means in unison, is exactly from the same note. In this case, in string trio, violin begins, and then the next bar, viola repeats exactly in the same octave, the same notes. So it's a complete copy. The next canon, 3 variations later, he puts them apart by just 1 tone. which becomes in seconda, which means in one step apart. And so he goes. The next canon, he makes them a third away, and then a fourth away. And it goes on like this 9 times, from variation 3 to variation 27. So you expect the last one, the variation 30, there should be distant already by decima, which means the 10th. But instead, he introduces something quite remarkable and also humorous. He introduces 2 themes, 2 folk songs with completely opposite message in each other. One is, "Oh, I've been away from you so long, let me embrace you, so come here." The other one is the opposite. "I've eaten too many carrots and cabbages, don't come too near." And that's how he juxtaposed those 2 themes, and what comes out, it just sounds like a fantastic hymn at the end of this 30 variations, just before aria comes back. So in this extraordinary pyramid of 15, 10, 5 variations, the most important element that all these variations based on is the aria. Now, most people would think that that beautiful melody, in this case in violin, that you hear is the theme. No, it only repeats itself once at the very end when aria da capo come back. The whole aria is based on the bass. Tim, boom, 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 pim, pim, boom. And it goes on. Anyway, it's for 16 bars. And that's what it's based. And therefore, every variation later on, whatever the theme they do, but the cello part, or bass part in this case, never changes its structure because it's all based on the bass. The theme is in the bass. When I finally realized later on, not right away, there are 3 variations just for 2 instruments. So it's violin and cello, and then the next one, 10 variations later, cello and viola, and then finally violin and viola. So 3 combinations. Clever Dima, clever arranger. But the numbers of that is 7, 17, and 27. I thought, oh, I must have done something that might have pleased the composer. Even before I completely finished it, sort of towards the last couple of weeks, I had my good friends, Misha Maisky and Gerard Cosset. We were rehearsing for a concert of chamber music, something entirely different. And then, since it was in my house in Wiesbaden, our wives were making dinner. I said, listen, guys, I've just done something. I just want to see how it works. Would you sit down just to play it? What did you do? Goldberg variations? Oh, you must be out of your mind. It took me quite a while to just convince them, but also my managers, both European one and the American one, they said, oh, Dima, come on. Are you kidding? I mean, transcription now is just so passé at that time. This is 84 by now. Bach, such icon. No, it will never work. That is like waving red in front of the bull. You think it's not going to happen? And look where we are. At that time, I was recording for Orfeo Classics. And the owner and sort of the driving force, a very eccentric man who had his meetings in the middle of the night. He would call me at 1 a.m, said, come, and we would just be listening to music, talking about ideas. Once at 2 or 3 a.m, I said, listen, I've done something. He said, absolutely, we're going to do it. Till this day, this recording never stopped selling. So, 40 years. And of course, the recording itself became more and more popular, but also so many string players embraced it with great enthusiasm because it added a major, major piece to the string trio repertoire. String trio repertoire is not that extensive. Now, I'm sure people who never heard me play, who don't know the first thing about me as a violinist, as a conductor, as a festival director, nothing. But they do know me as a transcriber of the Goldberg variations. So it's become sort of, my ticket to immortality because of Bach. Probably when nobody would remember anything else that I've done, they will be playing that. Up next, the last chapter of Keeping the Flame, first season. I'm Dmitry Sitkovetsky, and this podcast was produced by Libo Studio.